A Vipassana meditation retreat is a 10-day silence. You've probably never experienced that, and if you're thinking about doing it, from my experience, I can just tell you that there's nobody. The instructors are there if you get really stuck. But if you choose to stay silent, the only person that's going to be there for you is you. The only person that you're going to have to deal with is you. The only bullshit story that you're going to have to deal with is yours. That is super, super intense. And if you haven't thought about it, to think about what it's going to be like for yourself to show up with you for 10 days, sitting still and concentrating on different parts of your body. It's super, super intense. So the chap that I met, a good friend of mine now, is called Adrian. And we were there, we met up literally the morning, we saw each other the day before. We stayed at this place that was super close to it in Ignapuri in India. And we traveled in together. And out on the way in, I'd said to him, "Oh, have you really thought about this?" And he's like, "Oh, no, not really. It's something that I thought, yeah, I might like to do, but I haven't really thought about it." But I'd spent a long, long, long time thinking about it for years to decide if I was really ready to be able to do it. And he told me afterwards, the first 3 or 4 days, he just kept walking around and looking at the back of me thinking, why didn't I think about this more? Now, you know what? Maybe if he thought about it too much, he wouldn't have gone. I thought about it a lot and it was ready for me when I was ready. But there was a mentor that I had in the UK, and she'd said to me, if I did the Vipassana meditation again, what I'd love to do is be able to go to the Mecca, to Ignapuri, where Goenka started this. And I said to her, well, that's where I'm going to go and do it. Oh, no, how can you can't just decide to do that, she said to me. Like, oh, God, yeah, no, I've done loads of 10s and I've never managed to get there. I was like, oh, well, that's where I'm starting. And that's how I show up. It's like I'm going in at the top. I'm not here to fuck about. That's absolutely 100% guaranteed for myself of how I show up. So I went home that day and I booked the ticket and went. A period of time later, I flew into India, went up there, met Adrian, went and did it. So everybody I speak to, and I love to hear people when they say, oh, I've done a Vipassana, yes, it's like, oh, what's your story? Because there's 10 days here and you go on this journey through these 10 days of self-discovery about yourself. And from my experience, the first 3 or 4 were a little bit clunky, a little bit rocky. I was a little bit caught up in my head and just these thoughts kept coming that I couldn't control. Now, I'd spoken to somebody previously and they said, oh my God, sex just kept coming up for me all the time. Like when sex came up for me, go. Don't want to be thinking of that. I'm here at meditation retreat. I could knock it out. But the jealousy, I was in a new relationship and thinking about my partner, of who she'd been with before, how I compared to them, how I was showing up, how our previous boyfriends had showed up, ate me alive. I could only describe it as a vicious dog, just biting and chewing away at the insides of me, at my soul, at my thought process. I was in absolute pieces. But what I can say is there was a chap that I met before I went in, and I think that was there actually. He was a Canadian guy. And this would be any advice I would give to anybody that's thinking of going, or if they go and do it. And I say this to people that I know are going to go and do it. Is if you're thinking of leaving, stay one more night and evaluate it in the morning. And that for me was an amazing, amazing piece of advice, because I would have left. I'd have left on the 3rd day, I think. I was done. And then on the 7th day, that was massive for me. And to give you some idea of where my head was, the jealousy was so strong. I had so little self-worth. There was nothing left in me. And I decided that I was going to go and end my life. I was going to call the girl I was seeing. I was going to end it. I was going to go and buy heroin, and I was going to OD on it. And I was walking back to my room to get my bag to go and do that, because that's where I'd got to. I could not take this anymore. I was done. And then on the way back, I stopped. There was a massive mountain in front of me. Behind me, there is a mountain in front of me. Not that one, the one in Ignapuri. And this mountain just said, stop. It's not in the space for receiving. I was not in the space for anything apart from going. And the mountain asked me 10 questions. Now you may think to yourself, oh God, well, who is this guy? I've been sober then for 18 years. That's maybe 17. I hadn't put anything mind-altering into my body. And this mountain asked me questions, said, do you walk away from something when you've started it? No. Are you determined? Yes. And then it asked me 8 more questions, which I replied yes and no to. And the last question was, are you going to stay? And I said yes. And when I decided that that was for me, everything changed. So the following day, I meditated. This was the morning meditation coming up to lunchtime. I was hungry. The meditation finished, everybody left. I wasn't finished. I still had to go all the way through my spine, right to left and forward to back through every single vertebrae, and I was about halfway through. I stayed and everybody left. Now there was a guy there, I think he had a disability with his leg, and I'd looked at him a few times and it was like, oh my God, what must it be to walk so slowly, to move through life at this speed? I'm very fast paced, I move, I'm sharp, let's go, let's go, let's go. But when I went outside to walk towards lunch, I was so present in every step that I took. He overtook me to get the lunch. I can't tell you how present I was. Those last 3 days for me were magic, absolute magic. When I came out at the end and we started to talk, firstly, I noticed how busy the mind came with chatter. And that is why it's so good, because the chatter that we get and the distraction, social media, phones, radio, TV, the internet, cars, the opposite sex, food, all of this stuff takes up headspace. But inside the retreat, everything is very much narrowed. You got to get up, you got to meditate, you got to eat, you got to meditate some more, then you got to eat again, then you got to meditate some more, and then you go to sleep. And you wake up and you meditate some more, then you eat, and you do the same thing every day without all of the distractions I just mentioned. And it's magic, really, really magic to take that away and to really go in on this inward journey. Now, I said after I finished that for years and years and years that that was the hardest thing I ever did, but it was also the best. In another video, I will share how some years later, there was a harder thing and a better thing, but not in this video. All right, we're at 8 minutes. I feel like I've chatted away for no good. No, I've just chatted away. I'm done. If you've got any questions about Vipassana, if you've got any thoughts, feel free to reach out and ask me. If you don't want to ask in a comment, send me a direct message. And if you go up to the top of the page, you can click onto my website. You can send me a message or an email, and I'm more than willing to have a little chat about it. I've just scheduled in 20 minutes and have a chat. I love giving this gift back to people. And if you're on the edge of it, I would just recommend making the commitment to yourself. Either you're a yes or a no. All right, I'm over and out. God, if I can talk now, I am over and I am out. If you've listened, thank you so much. God bless.